I think, again, that goes back to one, not putting yourself in a position where you're trying to act too soon, but also, and this is, I think, the big ignored thing, is really exploring the given circumstances of any situation, of any scene, and really knowing what they are, and acting from those. And I think, because I think that's what your actor is saying when he says, I'm not ready. He's not fully, he may not fully feel he's in the circumstances of the scene, or his physical life isn't fully there for him, and he doesn't want to start
making
really
these big leaps
up
when he doesn't feel like he's supported with all of the...
Right, and I think you have to understand that's the process that gives you belief, that gives the actor belief in his, if you really explore the given circumstances and make them physically real for yourself, so you believe them, you can almost go anywhere.
I agree 100%, and I think that the buzzwords, which are very important, are always, what is my objective, what is the obstacle, what action am I playing, all of those things, very important. But the given circumstance, I think, for me, also is the bedrock. And it is the place you have to begin. And sometimes, when things, you're not sure what it is, we're all stuck, I will inevitably go back to, let's talk about the circumstances.
Right.
Maybe we haven't gotten specific enough, or maybe we haven't given it enough, maybe the famous, maybe the stakes aren't strong enough.
Right.
So maybe we need to make the given circumstances stronger.
And let's be clear, by given circumstances, we're talking about where am I? What time is it? What's just happened? These very basic questions that people tend to, the tendency is, oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah, right.
As opposed to, what does it really mean? And the really interesting thing about working with Uta was, place was everything to her. Where a scene is taking place was incredibly important to her, because she lived in that, how she lived in that place. And when you really start to explore that, you realize that a scene that's taking place in the living room could take place nowhere else. That's why it's happening there. Right. Scenes that happen in a kitchen happen because it's a kitchen, and you gotta get into a kitchen to really, feel you're in that scene. It's that kind of work that, and I think, my belief is that if you truly understand all the given circumstances and are living in them, the action becomes inevitable. You don't have to think about it. It's not an abstract, the objective or the action doesn't become an abstract thing that you've got to come up with.
Yeah, that you have to
There's no choice.
Reinvent.
I've got to do this.
It's because that's what
you
have to do.
Because that's what you have to do. And that's, you want to work from a place where you're giving yourself, and it's inevitable.
Because that's the basic truth. That's what we do in life.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're doing is the sum total of where we are, when, how, at any point in time. And that's, that's very human. So, we're in life, we're in theater, it's the same thing.
The other thing I think you work in you have to work in many different situations. You have to work where you have if you're at the Creed Rep, you're going to have 2 weeks of rehearsal. Or, you can have 6 weeks of rehearsal. Typically you're going to have between 3 and 4. I think the thing to keep in mind, and again, see if you agree with this, Ben, is that it's the early part of the process you don't want to shortchange. If you don't do, and sometimes that means you have to, if you know you have 2 weeks and the director's going to be getting this play on its feet right away, you have to be doing more of that work on your own, coming into the rehearsal. You just have to learn that, and you have to learn to pace it for yourself. But the place you don't want to shortchange it is the early work that you need to do, because if you have if you have a strong foundation,
yes. If you have a strong foundation,
you can find it. You're going to be finding it in performance, and you know that.
I will also say, if if you have a truncated rehearsal period, and increasingly, unfortunately, everywhere, the rehearsal period becomes truncated, and quite often what happens is you have a shorter rehearsal period and they start previews sooner so that they can begin generating income, so you have a longer preview period, but you're still performing in front of an audience.
Right,
I mean, so
people out there.
And this is perhaps the hardest thing of all, you can't shortchange the process and try to skip certain steps because you're panicked about the time you have. If, in my experience, and having learned this the hard way, if I have done that, and if I forced the actors to move too quickly, knowing that here's the date when we have an audience coming in, you can't ever backtrack and find that foundation.
Yeah.
And in a way, you have to say to yourself, it will, sometimes in previews, for example, you have to say, we're not going to be there.
Right.
We're not going to be there that first performance in front of an audience.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
Because we have to find it. They have to find it.
You have to be willing to live with a mess.
Yeah.
And know that it's going to be a mess.
And be willing to be brave enough to be in front of people with a mess.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that's true from an acting point of view. It's even more true from a directing point of view.
And you have to actively remind yourself of that at the time. It's tough. Yeah.
That leads us all the way back to the beginning, where it's sort of that process of starting from square one every single time, and it does feel like that to me from a directing standpoint. I don't.
Me too.
Feel like I ever really know how to solve the problem of the play until I start grappling with the problem of the play, which is always a unique.
Right. We all feel
adventure.
Underprepared going into the first rehearsal, no matter how much preparation we've done. It's inevitable. That's just the truth of it.
I also think, that as an actor, I think the hardest thing to do is to really listen. And to start the work from a place where you commit to listening rather than
first.
acting.
Yeah.
Listening first. And as I had the tremendous privilege to do, if you watched Uta Hagen work, and Pam saw her too. The listening was extraordinary. Everything affected her. And the only time I would get a note about another actor from her was if she felt they were not listening. She knew right away. And one of the things she said, the work you do is directly proportional to the quality to which you're being listened, both by yourself, by the other actors, and by the audience. That's where the magic really lives. But to do that, you have to start from a place where you're really committing to that, and it's not easy. And I think one of the things you have to keep in mind is you can't listen on stage. If you feel like you're on stage, I'm gonna pretend to listen. If I feel like I'm in a room with Mo and Pam, and we're at a meeting, and there's a table here, and I have a glass and a paper and a pad, and I'm going to start listening. Because I'm giving my body the belief to do that. If there's any degree of self-consciousness, you can't do it. You're not really listening in a way where what she says is going to affect you. And I think if you can set that as a goal from the moment you start a play, but that means you also have to be prepared.
You have to be prepared.
You have to be very prepared. And
it goes back to what you were talking about initially, that you are as prepared as you can be coming into the first rehearsal, so prepared that it gives you the freedom to listen and respond to what's being given to you in the moment. And you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, this has been great because, this has been just all these things are great reminders to me as I even think about my own those things that are the
We
most
should all have
important
these
things.
conversations more often.
We should.
We know each other and we never sit down.
I can talk about these things.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, anyway, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.